I never imagined my life would end up chained to a man whose name alone could silence a room full of killers. Forced into marriage with Alessandro Rossi, the cruelest mafia boss in the underworld, I braced for a hell of broken bones and whispered threats. But what I didn't know, what haunts me even now, was that his love for me ran deeper than blood, more twisted than death itself. It wasn't possession. It was something that clawed at the soul, a devotion that could bury us both alive. It started in the shadows of my father's crumbling empire. My name is Mara Voss, and I've always known the weight of secrets. My father, Elias Voss, wasn't just a businessman. He was a mid-level player in the syndicate, dealing in arms and favors that kept our family afloat in a sea of violence. I grew up in a house where locked doors hid more than skeletons. They hid ledgers stained with the ink of betrayal. By 18, I'd learned to forge signatures, launder small sums through shell companies, and spot a tail from 3 blocks away. It wasn't a choice. It was survival. My mother died when I was 12, a car accident that everyone knew was a hit from a rival family. Her death left me with a scar across my palm from gripping the steering wheel fragment too hard at the scene, and a deeper one in my chest that never healed. I buried my grief in the family's dirty work, becoming the invisible hand that kept Elias from drowning in his own debts. But debts have a way of catching up, especially when you owe the Rossi family. Alessandro Rossi wasn't just a boss. He was a legend whispered in dark alleys. They said he once executed his own brother for a perceived slight, carving out the man's tongue before the final shot. Cold, calculating with eyes like polished obsidian that could strip you bare without a word. I'd seen him once, years ago, at a neutral gathering in a derelict warehouse on the city's edge. He stood apart, his presence a vacuum that pulled the air from the room. I was there as my father's shadow, slipping notes and observing alliances. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second, mine wide with the naive fear of youth, his unreadable. I thought nothing of it then, just another monster in a suit. But now, looking back, I wonder if that was the moment his obsession took root. The night everything shattered began with a knock on our door at 2 a.m. I was in the study, poring over falsified accounts, the dim lamp casting long shadows across the oak desk. Elias burst in, his face ashen, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill. "Mara," he gasped, clutching a crumpled envelope. "They've come for payment." I didn't need to ask who. The Rossi seal, a coiled serpent devouring its tail, was embossed on the wax. Inside was a single sheet, a demand for 10 million euros, repayment for a loan Elias had taken to cover a botched shipment. But there was a clause, handwritten in sharp, elegant script, or equivalent collateral. My father's hands shook as he read it aloud. "What does that mean?" I asked, though a pit formed in my stomach. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "They want you, Mara, as Alessandro's wife." The words hit like a physical blow. I laughed at first, a hollow sound that echoed off the walls. "Me? Why? I'm no prize. I'm just—" "Your leverage," he interrupted, his voice breaking. "And more. Rossi's been watching. He knows about your skills, the forgeries, the hacks into rival systems. He sees value. Value, like I was a commodity, a tool to be traded. Rage boiled up, but beneath it was terror, pure, icy terror. I'd heard the stories of women in our world, married off, used, discarded when they broke. Alessandro's previous engagements ended in whispers of accidents or disappearances. No one survived his cruelty intact. I tried to run that night. Packed a bag with cash I'd skimmed over the years, a fake passport I'd crafted myself. But as I slipped out the back door, two shadows detached from the alley wall. Rossi's men, their grips like iron vices on my arms. "The boss sends his regards," one growled, his breath hot against my ear. They dragged me to a black SUV, blindfolded me, and drove in silence. When the cloth came off, I was in a penthouse overlooking the city lights, a glass cage high above the streets. Alessandro was there, lounging in a leather armchair, a glass of scotch in hand. He didn't look at me right away. Instead, he studied the skyline as if I were an afterthought. When he finally turned, his gaze pinned me in place. "Mara Voss," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like a threat wrapped in silk. "Welcome to your new reality." I spat at his feet. "This isn't a marriage. It's extortion." His lips curved into something that wasn't a smile. "Call it what you will. In 3 days, you'll wear my ring. Resist, and your father's debts become his grave." That was the hook, the invisible noose tightening. I thought of Elias, flawed as he was, the only family I had left. Could I let him die? Or worse, be tortured? Alessandro knew my weaknesses. He'd studied me like a predator stalks prey. But in that moment, as he rose and approached, close enough that I could smell his cologne, dark woods and smoke, I saw a flicker in his eyes. Not cruelty, but something deeper, hungrier. It vanished before I could name it. The days blurred into a nightmare of preparations. Guards shadowed me everywhere, their eyes averted but vigilant. I was fitted for a gown of black silk, fitting for a funeral, I thought bitterly. No white for purity. Alessandro wanted me marked as his from the start. I probed for escapes, a loose window grate, a distracted sentry. But each attempt was thwarted, as if he anticipated my every move. On the eve of the wedding, alone in my assigned room, I discovered the first crack in the facade. A small box on the dresser, unmarked. Inside was a locket, my mother's, the one lost in the crash. How had he gotten it? A note accompanied it. "She would want you." Protected. No signature, but the handwriting matched the debt letter. Protected? From what? Him? Sleep evaded me that night, memories flooding in. My mother's laugh, rare and bright. The way she'd whisper warnings about the life we led. "Trust no one, Mara." Not even blood. Had she known something about the Rossis? The accident? Had it been them? The wedding was a farce in a private chapel on his estate, attended by armed men and silent priests. I walked the aisle alone, my father's absence a deliberate punishment. Alessandro waited at the altar, impeccable in a tailored suit, his expression a mask. As the vows were exchanged, mine forced through gritted teeth, he slipped the ring on my finger. It burned like a brand. That night, in the bridal suite, I expected the worst. The hell I'd imagined. Violence, domination. But he didn't touch me. Instead, he poured 2 glasses of wine and sat across from me. "You're mine now," he said quietly. "But I won't take what's not given." I stared, disbelieving. Then why this? Why me? His eyes darkened. "Because some debts are older than money." What did that mean? Before I could press, he left, the door locking behind him. Alone, I clutched the locket, my mind racing. This wasn't cruelty. It was calculation. But why the restraint? What game was he playing? The first weeks of marriage were a tense standoff. We shared a sprawling mansion on the outskirts, a fortress of marble and steel. I had my own wing, but his presence loomed everywhere. Cameras in corners, staff who reported my every breath. I tested boundaries, slipping into his office one night, hacking his secure terminal with codes I'd memorized from overheard conversations. What I found chilled me. Files on my family, dating back decades. Photos of me as a child, at school, at my mother's funeral. He'd been watching for years. Why? The question gnawed at me. Was it control? Or something more sinister? One evening during a forced dinner, candlelit with guards at the doors, he broke the silence. "Your mother," he said, swirling his wine. "She was beautiful. Like you." I froze, fork midway to my mouth. "Don't talk about her." He leaned forward, his voice low. "She worked for my father once. Did you know that?" Lies. Or was it? My mother's past was a blank slate. Elias never spoke of it. But the locket? How else? Before I could respond, a gunshot echoed from outside. Chaos erupted, shouts, shattering glass. Alessandro shoved me under the table, his body shielding mine as bullets sprayed the room. "Stay down!" he snarled, drawing a pistol. In the mayhem, I saw my chance. A fallen guard's gun. I grabbed it, heart pounding. Escape? Or fight? But as the intruders breached the door, Alessandro fought like a demon, precise and lethal. One assailant lunged at me. I fired, the recoil jarring my arm. The man dropped. When the dust settled, Alessandro turned to me, blood streaking his face. Not his. Theirs. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw raw emotion. Not anger, but fear. For me. Who were they? I demanded, gun still in hand. "Rivals," he said, wiping his hands. "They want what's mine." Me, but why the fear? As he approached, I raised the weapon. "Tell me the truth about my mother." He stopped, unflinching. "She betrayed my family, and yours paid the price." The words hung like a death sentence. Betrayed? My mother? Before we continue the story, please drop a comment telling me where you're watching this from. And don't forget to subscribe to Mara's Betrayal. That revelation shattered something inside me. If true, my entire life was built on lies. But Alessandro's gaze held no triumph, only a twisted regret. As he reached for the gun, his fingers brushed mine, sending an unwelcome spark through my skin. The next days were a blur of paranoia. I dug deeper, using stolen moments to access more files. What I uncovered, correspondence from 20 years ago. My mother, Isabella, had been an informant for the Rossis, feeding intel on rival gangs. But she'd double-crossed them, selling secrets to Elias's enemies. The accident wasn't random. It was retribution. But why marry me? Revenge? Or atonement? Tension built like a storm. Alessandro grew distant, his ruthlessness on display during meetings I eavesdropped on. He ordered executions without blinking, his voice cold as steel. Yet with me, a fragile restraint. Gifts appeared, books on cryptography, tools for my hobbies. He knew my secrets, encouraged them. One night, unable to sleep, I confronted him in his study. "If my mother betrayed you, why not kill me? End the line." He looked up from his desk, shadows playing across his face. "Because I made a promise." "To who?" "To her." My world tilted. "What?" "Before she died, she begged for your life. I was there, Mara. I pulled the trigger on the hit, but spared you." The confession hit like a blade. He was her killer. My husband's hands were stained with my mother's blood. I lunged at him, nails raking his cheek. He caught my wrists, pinning me against the wall. "Hate me," he whispered, breath ragged. "It's easier that way." But in his eyes, that hunger again, obsession masked as love. As he released me, I fled, locking myself in my room. The locket burned against my skin. Had she known? Forgiven? The hook came at dawn, a package at my door. Inside, a recording, my mother's voice, pleading. Protect her, Alessandro. She's innocent. He'd loved her, and now, me, her shadow. But as I played it again, footsteps approached. The door creaked open, and there he stood, a silhouette against the light. We need to talk about the real betrayal, he said, his voice laced with something deadly. Your father's not who you think. The air in the bedroom felt too thick to breathe. Alessandro stood in the doorway, the hallway light carving harsh lines across his face. Blood from the earlier attack still flecked the collar of his shirt, but his eyes were steady, almost gentle in a way that made my skin crawl more than any scream ever could. Your father's not who you think, he repeated, stepping inside and closing the door with a soft click that sounded final. I clutched the old cassette recorder in my lap, the one that had held my mother's pleading voice. My thumb hovered over the play button like it was a detonator. You just told me you killed her. You expect me to believe anything that comes out of your mouth now? He didn't flinch. He crossed the room slowly, as if I were a cornered animal he didn't want to spook, and lowered himself into the armchair across from me. I didn't say I killed her, Mara. I said I pulled the trigger on the hit. There's a difference. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Explain that difference to me, then. I'm dying to hear it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers steepled. Your mother was marked for death by my father. She'd sold information that got 12 of our men slaughtered in a raid. Old man Rossi wanted an example made, public, brutal. I was 23, eager to prove myself. I led the team that night. His voice was flat, recounting facts the way other people read grocery lists. No remorse, no pride, just memory. But when we got there, he continued, Isabella wasn't running. She was waiting. She handed me an envelope. Inside were photographs of you, 6 years old, asleep in your bed. She looked me in the eye and said, If you want a message sent, send it through me. But leave my daughter untouched. She knows nothing. I felt the room tilt. My mother, bargaining with her life for mine. I took the envelope to my father, Alessandro said. He laughed, said a child was no threat, ordered me to finish it anyway. I refused. First and only time I ever defied him openly. So he sent another crew. They staged the crash. I wasn't there for the end. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to call him a liar, but the locket around my neck, the recording, the childhood photos in his files, everything lined up too perfectly. Then why marry me? I whispered. If you spared me once, why cage me now? His gaze dropped to the floor for the first time. Because your father finished what your mother started. The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples of dread spread through me. Elias Voss, Alessandro said, voice hardening, has been feeding information to the Calabresi family for the last 15 years. Quietly, carefully. He sold routes, schedules, safe houses. The ambush tonight? That was them. They weren't coming for me, Mara. They were coming for you, to hurt me. I shook my head violently. No, my father is weak, greedy, stupid, but not suicidal. He wouldn't cross you. He already did. Alessandro reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin dossier. He tossed it onto the bed beside me. Open it. My hands trembled as I flipped it open. Bank. Transfers to offshore accounts in Elias's name, signed by Calabresi lieutenants. Intercepted emails, Photos of my father meeting their underboss in dimly lit cafes. The dates went back years, right up to last month. One photograph stopped my heart. Elias handing over a flash drive to a man I recognized as Luca Calabresi, the heir apparent. In the background, half out of frame, stood a woman with dark hair. My mother's build. But she'd been dead for years by then. Impossible. I stared at Alessandro. This is forged. You're framing him to keep me compliant. He exhaled slowly. I wish it were that simple. Look at the metadata on the digital copies. They predate our marriage arrangement by months. I wanted to argue, but the evidence was meticulous. Too meticulous for a quick fabrication. My father had always been distant, more interested in ledgers than in me, but betrayal on this scale? It carved something vital out of my chest. Why tell me now? I asked, voice cracking. Because the Calabresi are moving again. Bigger this time. And they know the one thing that will break me is losing you. He paused, jaw tight. I need you to understand why I can't let you leave these walls. Not yet. I laughed again, colder this time. You think admitting my father's a traitor makes me trust you? You forced me into this marriage. You held a gun to his head. Metaphorically and probably literally. I held a gun to his head literally, Alessandro corrected quietly. 3 weeks ago. He begged for time. Offered you as collateral without hesitation. The room spun. I pressed my palms to my temples. Every pillar I'd leaned on was crumbling. He rose, moving toward the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow we deal with Elias. The door closed. The lock didn't engage. He was giving me the illusion of choice. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed until dawn bled through the curtains, replaying every memory of my father. The late nights he claimed were business. The way he'd flinch whenever Rossi's name was mentioned. The sudden influxes of cash that kept us afloat. It all fit, ugly and perfect. At 7 a.m., 2 guards escorted me downstairs to the dining room. Alessandro was already there, immaculate in a fresh suit, reading reports over black coffee. He didn't look up as I entered. Sit, he said. I remained standing. Where is he? Basement, unharmed for now. I crossed my arms. I want to see him. He finally met my eyes. Something unreadable flickered there. You will, after breakfast. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. You'll need strength for what comes next. The plate placed in front of me, poached eggs, toast, fruit, looked obscene. I forced down a few bites under his watchful gaze. When I pushed the plate away, he nodded to the guards. They led me through corridors I'd never seen, down stone stairs that smelled of damp and iron. The basement was a maze of locked doors and dim bulbs. At the end of a hallway, a steel door stood open. My father sat chained to a metal chair in the center of a bare room. His face was bruised, lips split, but alive. When he saw me, his eyes widened with something between relief and terror. Mara, he croaked. Tell them it's a mistake. Tell Rossi. Shut up, I said, voice flat. Alessandro leaned against the wall behind me, arms folded, silent. I stepped closer. Did you sell me to him, Elias? When he came for the debt, did you offer me like a payment plan? My father's mouth opened and closed. I had no choice. He would have killed me. That's not what I asked. He looked away. Answer her, Alessandro said quietly. Elias's shoulders slumped. Yes. I told him you'd be useful. That you could help with the books, the tech. I thought if I gave him something valuable. You thought you'd trade your daughter for your life. I finished for him. The words tasted like ash. Tears welled in his eyes. I was going to get you out later. I had a plan. Like the plan you had with the Calabrese? I pulled the dossier photos from my pocket. I'd taken them from upstairs and threw them at his feet. 15 years, Elias. You've been playing both sides since before Mom died. His face crumpled. It started small, just information to keep us safe. Then it snowballed. I couldn't stop. I turned to Alessandro. Do what you want with him. The words surprised even me. Cold. Final. Alessandro's eyebrow lifted a fraction. He hadn't expected that. Elias panicked. Mara, no, please. I walked out. The guards closed the door behind me, muffling his pleas. Upstairs, I went to the library and locked myself in. Hours passed. I didn't cry. I felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped everything soft from inside me and left only sharp edges. Near dusk, Alessandro found me curled in an armchair, staring at nothing. He's alive, he said from the doorway. I didn't kill him. I didn't respond. He entered slowly. I had him moved to a safe house under guard. He'll stay there until this war is over. Then we decide. Why spare him? I asked dully. Because you're not ready to carry that weight yet. He paused. And because I gave your mother my word, I'd protect what was hers. I looked at him then. Really looked. The ruthless Mafia boss who'd orchestrated my captivity, who'd killed without hesitation, who terrified an entire city. And beneath it a man bound by a promise made to a dying woman 20 years ago. It didn't make him good. It didn't erase the cage. But it complicated everything. That night, for the first time since the wedding, I didn't lock my bedroom door. If you're still watching the story till now, drop a comment so I know you're with me. Days turned into a strange rhythm. The estate became a fortress under siege. More guards, armored vehicles, drones overhead. The Calabrese were circling, testing defenses. Alessandro was gone from dawn till midnight, orchestrating counterstrikes, interrogating captives, planning. I could have tried to escape. Security was focused outward. But where would I go? My father was a traitor. My old life was ash. And some twisted part of me wanted to see how this ended. Instead, I inserted myself. I hacked into Calabrese communications using backdoors I'd built years ago for my father's side projects. I mapped their supply lines, flagged suspicious transfers. When Alessandro came across me in his office at 3 a.m., surrounded by glowing screens, he didn't throw me out. He watched for a long minute, then pulled up a chair beside me. Show me, he said. We worked in silence, side by side. His presence was a low hum of danger, but focused, almost respectful. When I traced a money trail to a shell company in Cyprus, he nodded approval. You're better than your father ever was. Don't compare me to him. I'm not. I'm saying you're wasted on running. I didn't answer, but the words lodged somewhere deep. 1 week later, the hook came in the form of a delivery. A box left at the front gate, no explosives, scanned clean. Inside, a single Polaroid. Me, asleep in my bed here at the estate, taken from inside the room. Someone had breached the fortress. Alessandro's rage was quiet and absolute. He tore the house apart looking for the traitor. Interrogations, lie detectors, blood on the floor. No one broke. That night he came to my room, not to threaten, but to stand guard himself. He sat in the armchair, gun on his lap, eyes on the door. You don't have to, I started. I do, he cut in. I won't lose you. The words hung between us, raw and dangerous. I lay awake watching him watch the door. At some point, exhaustion pulled me under. I woke to the pressure of his fingers brushing hair from my face. He froze when my eyes opened. Sorry. he murmured, pulling back. But in that half-second I saw it clearly. The obsession, not ownership. Devotion carved into bone. He stood abruptly. We found the breach. A guard on the east perimeter. He's being handled. Handled. I knew what that meant. As he reached the door, I spoke. Alessandro. He paused. The Polaroid? Was I really asleep? He turned. Yes. Then how did you not notice someone in the room? His jaw tightened. Because I was already there. Watching you sleep. The confession landed like a live wire. He'd taken the photo himself. Why? He didn't answer. Just left, the door closing softly behind him. I stared at the ceiling, heart hammering. He wasn't protecting me from the world. He was protecting the world from what he'd do if he lost me. And the scariest part? Some buried fragment of me wasn't sure I wanted to be saved from him anymore. But the next morning brought a new betrayal. One of the intercepted Calabrese messages contained coordinates for a meeting tonight. And the sign-off code was one only 3 people knew. My father's old cipher. Elias was still feeding them from his safe house, or someone wanted us to believe he was. Either way, Alessandro's eyes when he showed me the decrypt were lethal. He dies tonight, he said. I grabbed his arm. Wait, it's too convenient. Let me go with you. He stared at my hand on him, then at my face. No. Then you're walking into a trap. He searched my eyes for a long moment. Finally, you stay in the car. Armed. 1 step out, and I carry you back myself. I nodded. As we prepared to leave, I slipped a knife into my boot. Because if my father really had chosen them over me one last time, I wanted to be the one to end it. Or to discover who was wearing his mask. The convoy rolled out under cover of darkness, 4 black SUVs cutting through the city like blades. I sat beside Alessandro in the lead vehicle, the silence between us thick with unspoken things. Halfway there, his phone buzzed. He answered in Italian, voice clipped. When he hung up, his expression was stone. Change of plans, he said. The meeting location just shifted. New coordinates. He showed me the screen. My blood ran cold. The new location was the cemetery where my mother was buried. Someone was playing a very personal game, and we were driving straight into it. The cemetery gate stood open like a mouth waiting to swallow us. Moonlight bleached the gravel paths and marble headstones, turning everything the color of old bone. Our convoy killed the headlights half a mile out and rolled in silent, engines barely a growl. Alessandro had chosen only 6 men for this. No spectacle, no army. He didn't want a war tonight. He wanted answers. I sat in the back seat of the second SUV, a Glock heavy in my lap, the knife still in my boot. Alessandro rode in the lead vehicle, but before we left the estate, he'd leaned in through my window, voice low. If anything feels wrong, you shoot first. No hesitation. Not even for him. Him. My father. Or whoever was wearing his cipher like a second skin. We parked among the cypress trees that lined the eastern edge. The air smelled of wet earth and dying flowers. Alessandro appeared at my door and opened it himself. Stay behind me, he ordered. Then quieter. Please. That single word, please, felt more dangerous than any threat he'd ever uttered. We moved on foot, shadows among shadows. The meeting point was my mother's mausoleum, a small, neoclassical structure my father had built after her death. Ostentatious, out of place among the simpler graves. Its bronze doors glinted dully under the moon. Alessandro signaled. 2 men peeled off to circle left. 2 right. He and the remaining guard advanced with me tucked close behind. My pulse hammered in my ears louder than our footsteps. 20 yards from the mausoleum, Alessandro stopped, raised a fist. We froze. A figure stood in front of my mother's crypt. Tall, hooded coat, face obscured. Alone. No visible backup. Hands in pockets. Alessandro's voice cut through the night, low and lethal. "Show yourself." The figure lifted their head, slowly pulled back the hood. Not my father. A woman. Mid-40s. Dark hair streaked with silver, pulled into a severe knot. Sharp cheekbones, pale skin. The resemblance hit me like a fist to the sternum. She looked almost exactly like my mother would have at that age. I felt Alessandro tense beside me. His gun was already raised, steady as stone. "Who the fuck are you?" he demanded. The woman smiled, small, sad, knowing. "You don't recognize me, Alessandro? After all these years?" Her voice. God, her voice. It was my mother's cadence, the faint Sicilian lilt she'd never quite lost. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. "That's impossible." Her eyes, green just like mine, shifted to me, softened. "Mara, you've grown into her face." Alessandro's arm shot out, blocking me. "Stay back." The woman raised both hands, empty. "I'm not armed. I just want to talk." "Talk from there," Alessandro said, "and start with a name." "Isabella Rossi," she said quietly, "though the world buried me as Isabella Voss." The ground tilted under my feet. I heard the safety click off on Alessandro's gun. "You're dead," I whispered. "I was supposed to be," she answered. "But plans change." Alessandro's voice was ice-cracking. "Explain. Fast." She took one careful step forward. 20 years ago, I discovered Elias was selling Rossi's secrets to the Calabresi. I confronted him. He panicked. Decided the only way to silence me was to stage my death and sell me to them instead. A living informant is worth more than a dead wife. Her gaze flicked to Alessandro. "Your father wanted me eliminated. Elias offered a compromise. Fake the crash. Deliver me alive. The Calabresi paid handsomely. Your father agreed. Publicly I'd die. Privately I'd disappear into their network. Elias collected from both sides. I felt bile rise in my throat. My father hadn't just betrayed the Rossis. He'd sold my mother." Alessandro's jaw worked. "I saw the car. The body. Burned beyond recognition," she said. "A Jane Doe from the morgue. Dental records swapped. Easy when you own half the city's officials." "Why surface now?" he asked. "Because Elias is planning to sell Mara the same way he sold me. Only this time to end the war. The Calabresi want a permanent truce. Their price? The Rossi boss's wife, delivered alive, to be used as leverage. Or worse." Elias agreed. Tonight was supposed to be the handoff. I stared at her, at this ghost wearing my mother's face. "If you're really her, why didn't you come back? Why let me think you were dead?" Pain crossed her features. "Because I was watched every minute for 15 years. Because if I ran, they'd kill you to punish me. Because I was broken, Mara. They made sure of it." She pulled up her sleeve. Track marks scarred her arm. Old, healed, but unmistakable. They kept me useful. Addicted. Compliant. It took years to get clean, longer to earn enough trust to move freely. When I heard about your marriage, I knew Elias was repeating history. I couldn't let it happen again. Alessandro hadn't lowered his gun. "How do we know this isn't the trap?" She reached slowly into her coat. Alessandro's finger tightened on the trigger. "Easy," she said. "Just this." She pulled out a small envelope and tossed it at our feet. I picked it up. Inside, a USB drive and a photograph. The photo showed my father shaking hands with Luca Calabresi, dated 3 days ago. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, "He'll trade her tonight. Midnight. Bring proof." The USB held audio, Elias's voice, recorded secretly, arranging my abduction. Detailing routes, guards who'd been paid off inside Alessandro's own ranks. My stomach turned. Alessandro listened to the first 30 seconds, then crushed the drive under his heel. "Where is he now?" he asked my mother. "Waiting in the Calabresi safe house across the river. He thinks I'm delivering Mara alone. He doesn't know I rerouted the message to you." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, too far to be for us. Yet. Alessandro glanced at his men, gave a sharp gesture. They melted into the dark, moving to new positions. He turned to me. "Decision's yours. We can end this tonight. Elias, the traitors in my house. All of it." My mother watched me, eyes pleading. I know I have no right to ask forgiveness, but let me help finish what I started. I looked at the mausoleum, my mother's empty tomb. All these years I'd mourned a lie. "Take me to him," I said to Alessandro. "I want to hear it from his mouth." He searched my face, then nodded once. My mother exhaled, relief and fear mingling. We moved as a unit back to the vehicles. Alessandro put me in the center SUV this time, himself beside me, my mother in the passenger seat up front with his most trusted driver. No one spoke as we crossed the river. The safe house was a nondescript warehouse in the industrial district. Alessandro's scouts confirmed, 12 Calabresi outside, Elias's car parked in the loading bay. We didn't assault. Alessandro had a better play. He had my mother call Elias on a burner phone. "It's done," she said when he answered. "I have her." Opening the bay door now. Elias's voice crackled with greedy relief. "Good. Bring her inside. Payment's waiting." The bay door rolled up. We drove straight in. Elias stood in the center of the empty space, flanked by 4 Calabresi soldiers. Luca Calabresi himself leaned against a crate, smirking. The smirk died when Alessandro stepped out of the SUV, gun raised, his men fanning out behind us. Elias's face went gray. "Mara, what?" I walked forward slowly. "You sold her once. Now me. Was it worth it, Dad?" He looked at my mother, really looked, and staggered back. "Isabella?" She stepped beside me. "Hello, Elias." Luca Calabresi straightened, hand going to his weapon. "What is this?" "This," Alessandro said, voice deadly calm, "is the end of your war before it begins." His men emerged from the shadows, more than the Calabresi had counted on. Silent, professional. The 4 guards were disarmed in seconds. Luca raised both hands. "We can negotiate." "No," Alessandro cut in. "You wanted my wife. You get me instead." He shot Luca in the knee. The man screamed, collapsing. Chaos threatened, but Alessandro's presence froze it. His reputation did the rest. Elias tried to run. I caught his arm, spun him to face me. "Tell me why," I said. He was crying now. "I didn't want to. They forced. Liar!" My mother's voice was steel. "You volunteered, like you volunteered me." He looked between us, desperate. "I did it to protect us. The money—" "There was never enough money, was there?" I asked quietly. "Just deeper holes." He had no answer. Alessandro approached. "Mara." I knew what he was asking. I released Elias's arm. "Do it," I said. Alessandro raised his gun. "Wait," Elias shrieked. "I can give you names, higher-ups." "You already gave everything," I said. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Elias dropped. I didn't flinch. Luca, clutching his bleeding leg, laughed wetly. You think this ends it? You just started a bloodbath. Alessandro crouched beside him. No, I'm ending one. He pressed the barrel to Luca's forehead. My mother turned away. I didn't. The second shot echoed. We left the warehouse burning behind us. Evidence, bodies, all of it. Back at the estate, dawn was breaking pale and cold. My mother stood in the foyer, looking suddenly small. I can't stay, she said. They'll come for me now, too. Alessandro nodded. I have a place in Switzerland. Clean identity. You leave tonight. She looked at me. Will you come with me? The question hung heavy. I glanced at Alessandro. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those obsidian eyes, held something fragile. No, I said finally. This is my life now. Relief and pain warred on her face. She hugged me, hesitant at first, then fierce. She smelled like rain and gunpowder and something that might have been home once. I'm sorry, she whispered against my hair. I know. She left with an escort before the sun fully rose. I didn't watch the car disappear. Alessandro found me hours later in the library, staring at the ashes in the fireplace, though no fire burned. He didn't speak, just stood behind my chair, close enough that I felt his warmth. I killed my father. Tonight, I said to the empty grate. You ended a traitor, he corrected quietly. I turned to look up at him. And you killed for me. Again. I'd burn the world for you, he said simply, like it was fact, not confession. I stood. We were inches apart. Why me? I asked. All those years watching. The locket. The promise to her. Why? He reached out, slow enough that I could stop him. I didn't. His fingers traced the line of my jaw. Because the first time I saw you, 6 years old, asleep with that scar on your palm from gripping broken glass at her crash scene, I knew you were the only pure thing I'd ever touch. And when you looked at me that day in the warehouse, 18 and defiant, I was lost. His thumb brushed my lower lip. I didn't force the marriage to punish you, he said. I did it to bind you to me before the world could take you away. Selfish, cruel, but I'd do it again. I searched his face for deceit and found none. And if I want to leave now? I asked. His hand dropped. Pain flickered across his features, raw, unguarded. Then I let you go, but I'd follow. Guard from a distance. Die before I let harm near you. The honesty terrified me more than any cage. I stepped closer until our breaths mingled. I'm not leaving, I said. His eyes closed for a moment like a man spared execution. When they opened, the obsession was still there. Darker, deeper, but something else threaded through it. Hope, maybe. I rose on my toes and kissed him. Not soft, not gentle. A collision. His arms came around me like steel bands, lifting me against him. The kiss was hunger and grief and years of restrained violence finally unleashed. When we broke apart, foreheads touching, he whispered against my mouth, You'll ruin me, Mara Rossi. Good, I whispered back, because you've already ruined me. But peace is a lie in our world. 3 days later, a package arrived. No return address. Delivered by courier who vanished. Inside, a single cassette tape. Old. The kind my mother used to record lullabies for me. I played it in the study, Alessandro beside me. Static. Then a voice, not my mother's. A man's. Distorted. Familiar in a way that raised the hairs on my neck. Hello, daughter, it said. If you're hearing this, Elias failed. But blood remembers blood. The Voss line has debts older than you know, and I'm coming to collect. The tape ended with a click. Alessandro's face was grim. Voice match? I was already running analysis on the system. 99% match. The voice belonged to a man declared dead 15 years ago. My uncle, my mother's brother, thought killed in a Rossi hit. But graves, it seemed, were temporary in our family, and he was coming for me next. Merged chunks, 4-6, the final circle, approximate 3,000 words. The coordinates led to an abandoned monastery on a cliff above the restless sea, 2 hours north of the city. The building had stood empty since the war, roof half caved, bell tower leaning, wind screaming through shattered stained glass. Dante had chosen perfectly. Isolated, impossible to surround, full of places to hide a sniper or a trap. We arrived at dusk, exactly 1 week after the silver coin arrived, scratched with a date and a location. Alessandro brought only 4 men, his best, stationed in the tree line with thermal scopes and suppressed rifles. No air support, no drones. Anything louder than footsteps would scare Dante away. This had to feel intimate, or he wouldn't come. I wore black tactical gear, knife on my thigh, Glock on my hip. Alessandro was a shadow in matte black, the only color a thin line of fresh blood on his knuckle, where he'd punched a wall in frustration 1 too many times. We walked the last half-mile up crumbling stone steps carved into the cliff. The sea roared below us, hungry. Inside the nave, moonlight stabbed through holes in the roof, striping the flagstones silver and black. The pews had rotted to dust. Only the altar remained, draped in a cloth gone gray with age. Dante sat on the altar steps, smoking a cigarette, rifle leaning beside him within easy reach. The scar across his eyebrow caught the light. He looked older than the photographs, late 50s, lean, still lethal. He smiled when he saw us. Punctual, a Voss trait. Alessandro's hand rested on his sidearm. This ends tonight. Dante exhaled smoke toward the ruined ceiling, one way or another. I stepped half a pace ahead. Alessandro tensed, but allowed it. You wanted me here, I said. Speak. Dante studied me. You have her fire. Same stubborn mouth. Don't talk about my mother. Fair. He stubbed the cigarette out on stone. I wasn't there when she needed me. I won't make that mistake with you. You're not taking me anywhere. That's not the plan anymore. He stood slowly. I'm here to close the ledger. Final entry. Alessandro growled. You tried to sell her twice. You manipulated Elias. You sent the Calabrese. There is no ledger left. Just corpses. Dante shrugged. I needed you desperate, Alessandro. Desperate men expose their weaknesses. You raided. You bled. You showed my people your roots. The city's balance has already shifted. But I always intended to pull her out unharmed. Family protects family. You kidnapped her, drugged her. Theater. The Calabrese cell that took her went rogue. I had them handled the moment I knew, but you reached her first. Impressive. He looked at me. I underestimated how deeply he'd bound himself to you. Enough, Alessandro said. You want the old ledger? It burned. I don't want paper, Dante replied. I want acknowledgement. The Rossi Empire kneels to the Voss blood it stole. Publicly, or privately, here, with a bullet in your head, and Mara at my side, rebuilding what was ours. Alessandro's gun cleared leather. Instantly. Never. Dante didn't flinch. Then she chooses. The words landed like a blade between us. Come willingly, Dante told me. Leave the Rossi name. I'll give you power, legacy, truth. No cages. Just family. Or, I kill him. You watch. Then I take you anyway. Broken things mend, given time. Alessandro started to speak. I raised a hand. He fell silent. I stepped closer to Dante, pulled the silver coin from my pocket. held it up so moonlight glinted off it. His eyes softened. "You gave me this when I was 4, I said. Told me to hide it where no one would look. I remember." "Blood remembers," I said. "But it also lies." I flicked the coin high, straight at his face. He flinched, tracking it. In that half-second I drew my knife and kicked his rifle clattering across the stone. Alessandro fired twice. Dante staggered, blood blooming on shoulder and chest, but didn't fall. He laughed, wet and ragged, and drew a hidden pistol with his left hand. Alessandro's slide locked back. Empty. Dante aimed. I dove for the rifle. Alessandro charged empty-handed, roaring. The shot cracked wide, Dante's offhand wounded shoulder ruining his aim. Alessandro crashed into him. They went down hard off the altar steps in a tangle of violence. I racked the rifle, but they were too intertwined for a clean shot. Dante rolled on top, pistol rising under Alessandro's chin. I dropped the rifle, sprinted, threw my weight into them. The pistol discharged into stone. Alessandro surged, arm snaking around Dante's throat. Dante clawed, bucked. I found the dropped pistol, came up aiming. Alessandro had him in a choke, Dante's face purpling. Dante's eyes met mine over Alessandro's shoulder, pleading. I lowered the gun. "Not like this," I said. Alessandro hesitated. I placed the pistol down, kicked it away. "Stand up!" He released Dante slowly. The older man slumped, gasping. I crouched. "The debt is paid," I told him. "No more blood for blood. The Voss line ends here, with choice, not murder." I pulled the cyanide capsule Alessandro had once given me, insurance against capture, and held it out. "Take it. Die clean on your terms, or live in a cage forever, powerless." Dante stared at the vial, then at me. He took it, raised it in a mock toast. "To blood." Swallowed. 30 seconds later he lay still, eyes open to the stars. We left his ashes to the sea by dawn. No trace. 3 months later I woke nauseated in the night, took the test in secret. 2 pink lines. I sat on the bathroom floor until sunrise. When Alessandro woke, my packed bag was by the door. He went pale. "Mara, I'm pregnant." Joy and terror warred in his eyes. "Our world is poison for a child." He knelt, hands on my knees. "We can change it. Go legitimate. I'll burn everything." I placed his palm on my stomach. "This child will not grow up choosing between cyanide and cages." "Where are you going?" "Switzerland, to my mother. I want you to come, but only if you leave the crown behind. No empire, just us." Silence. Then, "Give me 1 week to transfer power cleanly." 1 week later we left the city forever. No announcement. 2 suitcases. A private flight north. My mother met us at the small airport, tears streaming. We settled in a chalet overlooking Lake Geneva. Alessandro learned to chop wood. I learned to breathe without scanning every shadow. Our daughter, Isabella Caterina, was born screaming on a March morning bright with snow glare. Alessandro held her like she might break, tears cutting tracks down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered. "How is she perfect?" "Because she was born free." Isabella is 5 now, dark curls, green eyes, fearless. She skis, climbs trees, speaks 3 languages, and has her father completely undone. We never lie to her, but we curate the past carefully. She knows Nonna Isabella once had to hide, that her grandfather Elias made bad choices, that a great-uncle went away long ago. The rest can wait. Some nights Alessandro and I sit by the fire, wine in hand, talking about the old life like veterans. "Do you miss it?" I asked once. "The power?" "No. This is the only empire I want." Last winter my mother's health failed. age and old damage catching up. We moved her into the chalet. Alessandro built a ramp without being asked, carried her to the garden for sunlight. In spring, when crocuses pushed through snow, she called me to her bed. "One more secret," she whispered. She told me about a tiny key she'd swallowed the night of the staged crash, hidden all those years. It opened a box in the old Voss vault beneath Palermo's cathedral. "Proof of everything," she said, "and something your grandfather left for the last daughter." We debated for weeks. In the end, we went, just the two of us. Isabella stayed with village friends, crying when we left. Alessandro nearly canceled the trip, but some circles demand closing. We flew to Sicily under false names, drove to Palermo at night. The cathedral was silent, moonlight through rose windows painting the floor in jeweled colors. A side door, long forgotten, opened with an old key my mother had kept hidden in her piano bench. Down spiral stairs, dust and incense. The vault door was small, iron, ancient. The key fit. Inside, ledgers confirming every twisted thread. My grandmother's stolen child, Alessandro's mother, the reversed debt, names and dates. And at the bottom, wrapped in oilskin, a single envelope addressed to the last daughter. Inside, my grandfather's handwriting. "Mara, if you read this, the circle closed. Blood took blood, but you broke the chain. There is no more debt. Live free. Burn the rest." We did. We burned every page in a metal drum behind the cathedral until only ash remained. On the flight home, Alessandro held my hand the entire way. "No more ghosts," he said. "No more ghosts," I echoed. Back in the Alps, spring turned to summer. Isabella chased butterflies in the meadow. My mother sat in the garden watching, smiling her quiet smile. One night, snow beginning to fall again, though it was only autumn, Alessandro and I stood on the terrace. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, hands resting on the slight curve where our second child already grew. "I thought hell awaited," I said softly, echoing the words I'd once feared most. He kissed my temple. "Never knew I'd love you beyond life." I turned in his arms, looked into those obsidian eyes that once terrified a city, and now looked at me like I was the only star in his sky. "I know," I whispered. "Every day I know." On the mantel inside, in a small glass case, sits the silver coin. Cleaned, polished, catching firelight. A reminder. Blood remembers. But love rewrites everything. And we, against all odds, rewrote ours into something unbreakable. If you liked the story, drop a comment for part 2, and don't forget to subscribe to Mara's Betrayal.